welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is the Astral Library. I hope you are all doing very well today. I'm coming at you with my November wrap up. So we're gonna see how well I did for that November TBR. And I've actually done pretty well for November's. So let's go ahead and dive straight into the statistics of what I read this month. And I have my handy dandy iPad to help me out here. So for November, I read a total of 7 books. So it was a really good reading month. Not my best reading month, but definitely not my worst. I was still reading about almost 2 books a week. Now, in terms of my TBR, so if you remember, I had 3 books on my TBR. I had the Graveyard book, which was a recommendation from a friend, and I had Arabian Nights, which was a classic book. And then the third book I had was The Lovers by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which is a short story that was on my Kindle. Of this TBR, I managed to finish 2 of them, and the only one I didn't read was, in fact, Arabian Nights, which I just never got around to. So I did fail my TBR, but I ended up reading so much more than what I originally thought I was going to. So even though I didn't get to Arabian Nights, it just means I'll pick it up another time. But of the 7 books I read, including the TBR, I read a total of 1,858 pages. A still solid amount of pages. Not my longest reading month. I wasn't reading the biggest of books, but I was still reading quite a bit. Now, those pages separated into 4 genres. I had 3 fantasy books, 2 literary classics, 1 sci-fi/graphic novel, and 1 short story that was magical realism. And of those genres, I ended up with an average rating of about 3.5 stars, where I had 4 4-star reads, 1 5-star read, and 2 2-star reads. Overall, a stellar reading month, even though the average is brought down slightly by those 2 stars. So I still did great. This month was a total success in my book. So let's go ahead and jump straight into what I read this month and kind of what they were about. So we're actually going to start with The Lovers by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Now that is a short story. It's only about like 40 or so pages long. So it was a relatively quick read that took me longer to get to than I thought I would. But it's about a girl who's like living in this small town, and there's a rumor among all the girls that if you do this ritual, you'll meet your soulmate the next day. And we start the story with our girl understanding that her soulmate and her lover is going to be someone from the forest. Maybe a couple days after she does this like ritual, a ranger, like a hunter, wanders into town, ends up staying at the inn her sister runs, and she falls in love with this gentleman. But he ends up marrying her sister, and she's heartbroken all over again. And her sister is someone who seemingly takes advantage of her younger sister, our main character, and uses her to kind of like run the store and to do all these chores for her while she is busy getting the husband, having the kids, and kind of like being this like figure in town. And our main character just wants to like sit alone in the forest and read and fall in love and have her own happy ending. Well, after her sister marries the man, the sister kind of like gives up on the idea of love and just wants to run away essentially. But at the same time, the sister keeps running into this like vagrant individual who seems to be homeless and dirty, but is also really flirty with her and seems to be like poking at her. And he is an individual that comes from the forest. It was a very cute story. This is the first time I ever read anything by Silvia Moreno Garcia, so I was very interested in seeing how I would like the writing, how I would like the storytelling, and I really enjoyed it. More than I thought I would, just because short stories rarely pull me in, just because they're too short and I just want some more. And I really did want more from this story because the characters were really interesting. I would love to see this turn into a whole novel because the characters were just so intriguing and the relationships were really interesting, and I wanted to see it develop a little bit more, particularly between that vagrant individual and our main character, because they just had like such great chemistry. And so now I want to read more Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I have Mexican Gothic on my shelf, so I might start there, or I might go pick up her vampire one. I'll throw the cover on screen here, but I am intrigued and I want to read more by her because I want to see what she does in a full novel. Now, the next thing on my TBR was The Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. So this was a recommendation by my friend Sarah, and I knew nothing going into this book. She had said it is spooky and dark and kind of like a retelling of the Jungle Book. So let me preface my little journey here. So knowing nothing about this book, I just dive in. And you know what this book starts with? The murder of this young boy's family. Like just straight murder of him. Oh, this creepy man coming in with a knife and stabbing everyone in the house but this baby. That is how this book starts. So I knew from the moment I read those first few pages, I was in for a treat, and I was. So this book follows Nobody Owens, who is the only surviving member of his family after a man named Jack murders them. Purely by luck, Nobody ends up crawling out of his crib and toddling over to the graveyard, where there's a series of ghosts who decide to take him in and protect him. So in this book, we are following Nobody's life as he lives in the graveyard and learns to become human among ghosts in a graveyard. This was such a cool story. I think in part because this is the illustrated version by Dave McKean, and his illustrations are just so pretty. Let me show you some examples. So we have stuff like that, and they're like beautifully interwoven with the chapters itself. So that made reading this a lot more special and fun, because not only was I able to like paint my own picture in my head, but I got to see the visuals come to life on the page. I really like this book. It was really cute. More than I thought I was going to like it, to be honest, because at times there were moments where this book kind of was slow as we're really just going through Nobody's life, learning through the eyes of a kid and seeing how he sees the world from someone who is essentially living outside it with the dead. But it was magical, it was sweet, and I hated the ending. The ending is very Neil Gaiman, I'm told, in that it's bittersweet. I wish it didn't end the way it did, but even with that ending, I still gave this book a solid 4 stars, because it was just, I had such a good time reading this, more than I ever thought I could, picking up this book that I just I knew nothing about and had never read the author before, and I really liked it. And it was like the perfect combination of like Halloween eerie to like the cool wintry vibes of November. Like this was a perfect book to read in November when you're still missing that like Halloween season. Like highly recommend if you're like, I need something, I'm still in the spooky mood, but I need to be like the cozy winter vibes. This book. I wouldn't call this like cozy fantasy or anything, or even a cozy book, but it's very sweet and it gives that like cozy vibe. I will definitely be picking up some of the other Neil Gaiman books I have on my shelves, such as Good Omens and American Gods. I am excited to be reading more of Neil Gaiman now. Okay, the next 2 books I read, I actually posted a reading vlog of, and that is Dark Rise and Dark Heir. So these are part of the Dark Rise trilogy, and I'm not gonna go too in depth because like I said, I have a whole vlog dedicated to me reading or rereading and reading these books. And oh my god, Dark Heir was my most anticipated read for the year, and oh my god, it lived up to it. This was my only 5-star read for the month, and it earned every one of those stars. I still think about this book desperately. I still think about this book because oh my god, the ending. Like I said, okay, I'm not gonna go too much in this, because if I do, this video will be an hour long. We don't need it. If you want to hear my thoughts, please check out that vlog, because it's so much fun. I had a lot of fun recording it, and my reactions when reading Dark Heir are pretty funny, if I have to say, because it's, you know, that moment where you just like freak out a book by yourself, or you're like talking to yourself and like screaming. That was me, except on camera. So I really enjoyed my time reading these books. I gave Dark Rise a 4-star, and again Dark Heir a 5-star, because I just super enjoy the series, and I cannot wait for the 3rd book, because I need it. I need it like a year ago. And then the next book I read is M is for Monster by Talia Dutton. So this is a sci-fi graphic novel that's a retelling of Frankenstein. So in this retelling, we are following 2 sisters who were scientists and conducting some sort of experiment. However, one day something went wrong and one of the sisters died. And in her grief, our older sister Frances tries to bring her younger sister Mara back. However, what comes back is not Mara. It is M, who is our quote-unquote monster of this story. When M comes back, she has no memories of her life as Mara, and in fact doesn't feel like she's Mara at all. And so in this graphic novel, we're following that journey as this M is trying to both embody Mara's life and personality, while also trying to figure out who she is as an individual, and kind of coming to terms with grief and the death and loss of Mara. This was a really cute read, chock full of representation, so many different types of characters and sexualities represented and identities represented. It was really cute, and the art was stunning. Like, look at these greens. They're so pretty. And I just love the art style. And I believe this is Talia Dutton's debut graphic novel. And it was just, what a debut. I want to read so much more by this author because not only did I love the art, but I really, really liked the story. It was sweet. It was cute. It was melancholic and just filled with the same kind of wonder I had for Frankenstein, which is one of my favorite literary classics. And I felt like this is such a cute modern twist on it because it had the heart of what Frankenstein represented, but it definitely made the story its own. I mostly picked it up because of the cover, because like, look how amazing that cover is. Just the way it frames the two sisters, and then we have M. I adore it, and I'm so happy I read it. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Okay, so the last 2 books I actually read for school, so like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about them, but that was Benito Cereno by Herman Melville, and hold on, I have to read the title, I always mess this up. The Life and Adventures of Joaquin Murietta, Celebrated California Bandit. So 2 very different stories. So Benito Cereno by Melville is a white captain who encounters a ship that seems to be stranded. And as he comes aboard this ship, it's very odd. So we have a few Spanish men and a lot of Black slaves on board. As we, the audience, find out, but our character really doesn't find out till much later, that this ship has actually been taken over by the Black slaves and that these Spanish people are being held captive and sort of used to puppet this experience so they can get their materials and make their way to freedom. So we're following this clueless and racist captain as he's trying to piece together what is going on in this ship. It's a wild story. I'm not sure I would recommend it. I actually gave it 2 stars just because you don't know where you're standing. This is the only Melville I've actually read because I refuse to read Moby Dick. I'm gonna go my whole life never reading Moby Dick and be happier for it. And after reading Benito Cereno, I almost think I'm better off not having to read any more Melville in my life because this was just a time. The other one I ended up reading was The Life and Adventures of Joaquin Murietta, who was a figure in California history who was a bandit that would go around terrorizing white people and other people of color in America after the Mexican-American War, and California was ripped away from Mexico. This one, I listened to this as an audiobook, and oh my god, this read like a Tarantino Western film because it was so bloody and just balls to the wall wild that it was entertaining, but also too much at times. And I'm someone who loves Tarantino films and like that good, just like good bloody, but I had no idea what was going on in the story half the time. And there were moments that I really, really enjoyed this book and its depiction of the characters and how like women were involved in Joaquin Murietta's Bandito, or like the group of bandits that would terrorize everyone, and how they played like a relatively key role in forming that and galvanizing all the kind of members of the Bandito around them. But even with those great moments, there's still a lot of moments that were just like weird and like patriarchal and kind of still like POC versus POC crime. Like we have a moment where Joaquin Murietta slaughters a whole bunch of Chinese rail workers for seemingly no reason. We have him reinforcing like patriarchal standards on one of the female Bandito members whose husband was like actively beating her. It's okay, she gets her comeuppance because she like literally kills him in his sleep and it's the best thing ever. And she like runs off and marries a really young guy and it's like happy ever after. So she lives, it's great. But like parry those moments and those kind of stories with like, yeah, you have to be beaten by your husband because that's how it is. Just make this like push and pull just too wild for me. I ended up also giving this 2 stars, even though I still had quite a bit of fun listening to it, only purely as a like super bloody story. But yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend either of them to people to read. I think Murietta has a lot of potential if you read it certain ways. There's very interesting scholarship, but I think I'm more interested in what Murietta became because he is the basis of the figure of Zorro. I love the Antonio Banderas Zorro movies growing up, and my grandma was in love with that man. But Zorro also becomes the basis of Batman, and you know me, I love some Batman. And so just canonically, Batman now has to be Hispanic if he's coming from 2 Hispanic figures. Batman is Hispanic. That's all I'm saying. We need to rectify that story, people. Let's make Bruce Wayne a Hispanic. But that's a tale for another day. Alrighty, but that is what I read in November. Like I said, I think I had a really good month despite the 2 things I had to read for school. Overall, I read some new favorites and I lost my mind and I fell in love with new characters and new relationships and It was so great. It was a great time. Probably one of my more enjoyable reading months for the year because I just was loving everything I picked up. But that is it for me. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please consider leaving a thumbs up and a comment down below. Let me know, what was your favorite thing you read this month? Was it something new and exciting, or was it something you were expecting? I would love to hear and know what you guys read. Or if you don't have anything to say, leave me a purple heart down in the comments down below to let me know that you were here and that you saw to the end of this video. But if you like me and want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel out and lets me know that what you guys want to see. I've been having so much fun making videos and I love releasing a video every week for you guys. But that is it for me. I need to go sort through a garage. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!